Since the dawn of time, humans have been telling stories, passing them down from generation to generation. From urban legends to ghost stories to terrifying creatures from folklore. The stories never cease. So today on Top 5 Scary Videos, I'm going to be counting down our list of the top 5 scary monsters from folklore. Before we begin though, be sure to stick around until the end of the video where I'll be responding to some of your comments. And with that, let's jump in. In at number 5, the Wendigo. Also known as the Wendigo or Witico, the Wendigo originates from Native American legend and is said to be a demonic half-beast as told by the Algonquin peoples along the Atlantic coast of the USA and Canada. The legend itself lends its name to the disputed modern medical term Wendigo psychosis, which is supposed to be a culture-bound disorder. To quote Basil Johnston, a teacher and scholar, the Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tauntly over its bones, with its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash grey of death. Its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets, the Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody. Unclean and suffering from separation of the flesh, the Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odour of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. The most common interpretation of the Wendigo is that it's a spirit that possesses a person after they resort to cannibalism, whether that be under dire circumstances or not, and turns them into a Wendigo. They are also said to have an endless craving for human flesh and are sometimes said to grow in proportion to the meals that they eat, so that they never get full. Wendigos are known to have superior speed and stealth, the ability to mimic human voices, near perfect hunting skills, and in some cases the ability to control the weather. They are also known to bring darkness before dusk. In at number 4 we have Dover Demon. Originating in Dover, Massachusetts, the Dover Demon is a small humanoid that was subject of an intensive scare during the 1970s. When multiple witnesses came forward reporting sightings across the area. This monster is described as looking like a grey alien, except that it has skin of a rosy orange coloration. It has a large head on a small body and oftentimes travels on all fours. Its eyes are said to glow, sometimes orange, sometimes green. The first sighting begins at 10:32 p.m. on April 12th, when Bill Bartlett, Mike Mazoka, and Andy Brody were driving north on Farm Street. Bartlett, who was driving, spotted something creepy along the side of the road. Think it was a dog or a cat, he thought nothing of it. That was until his headlights illuminated the creature. The creature turned its head and looked at the group, his large head on his stick-thin body, and his eyes glowing an orange colour. Now skeptics claim that the Dover Demon is simply a lost baby moose, which has been glimpsed under unusual conditions, making it appear humanoid. However, people don't believe this explanation and point out that all sightings happen during the wrong time of year for a moose that small to exist. In at number 3 we have Baba Yaga. Hailing from Slavic folklore, the Baba Yaga is a supernatural being or witch that takes on the form of an old hideous woman. In some stories she is said to fly around in a mortar, wielding a pestle and dwelling deep in the forest inside a hut that is said to stand on chicken legs. Baba Yaga has become one of the most memorable and distinctive figures in European folklore. In certain stories it is said that Baba Yaga may help or hinder those who encounter her or seek her out. In others she is known to kidnap children, threatening to eat them. In fact, many tales of witches living in houses made of candy or cake were named Baba Yaga. In some stories, heroes would venture into the wilderness to seek out help of Baba Yaga, asking for her advice or assistance in completing a quest. Sometimes she played the role of an antagonist, while other times she was a source of guidance. No matter the story, she always drives a hard bargain and will set out her conditions in terms of the agreement. All of her verbal contracts allow her the right to eat anyone who was later unable or unwilling to fulfill their end of the deal. Coming in at number 2, Dullahan. The Dullahan, also known as the Headless Horseman, is a type of fae originating from Irish folklore. It is said that this sinister being appears as either a man or a woman riding atop a black horse, but the rider has no head upon their shoulders. Instead, it is carried under their arm. It is also said that the head appears dead and rotten, with a demonic grin spread across its face from ear to ear. The Dullahan is also known to carry a whip made from a human spine, and sometimes pulls a wagon which is adorned with funeral objects. According to legend, around midnight on certain Irish festivals or feast days, the Dullahan man may be observed riding a dark and snorting steed across the countryside. A storyteller from the Mourne Mountains once recounted his experience with the monster, stating, "I seen the Dullahan myself stepping on the brow of the hill between the Bryansford and Moneyscalp late one evening, just as the sun was setting. It was completely headless, but it held up its own head in its hand, and I heard it call out a name. I put my hands across my ears in case the name was my own, so I couldn't hear what it said. When I looked again, it was gone, but shortly afterwards there was a bad car accident on that very hill, and a young man was killed. It had been his name that the Dullahan was calling. Now it is said when the Dullahan stops riding, that is where a person is due to die, and when a Dullahan calls out the person's name, the person immediately perishes. There is no way to block the road against a Dullahan. All locks and gates open to them when they approach. They are however frightened of gold, and even a single gold pin can drive a Dullahan away." And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Tekiteke. Hailing from Japan, Tekiteke is a malevolent ghost / demon similar to that of the infamous Kuchisaka Onna, or the slit-mouthed woman. Tekiteke was originally a human who was bullied and in some stories assaulted, resulting in her jumping off a train platform onto the tracks and getting cut in half by the oncoming train. It is said that she barely survived due to the cold weather, with her crawling to a person for help. But instead of aiding her, they left her to die. Now Tekiteke's vengeful spirit stalks the streets of Japan. She often lurks in urban areas and around train stations at night. Since she no longer has a lower half, she travels on either her hands or elbows, dragging her upper torso and making a scratching, Tekiteke-like sound. According to legend, if she encounters an individual, she will chase them and slice them in half, killing them in such a way that mimics her own disfigurement. One particular legend goes as follows. As a young schoolboy was walking home at night, he spotted a beautiful young girl standing by a windowsill resting on her elbows. They smiled at each other for a moment. The boy wondered what a girl was doing in an all-boys school, but before he could wonder more about the girl, she jumped out the window and revealed her lower half was missing. Frightened, he stood on the sidewalk, but before he could run, she caught up to his location quickly and cut the boy in half. Sucks to be him. Well, there we have it. Do you guys agree with our list? Were there any scary monsters from folklore that we missed? Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below, and perhaps we can do a part 2. Before I go though, I just want to respond to a few comments from one of our last videos, top 5 scary horror movie openings. Kristen Guerra said, "Jaws is cool, it's the ultimate nightmare, the nightmare that will never end." That is very, very true. I have a horrible fear of the ocean, and one of those reasons is because of Jaws. I don't like sharks. I think all of them are gonna kill me one day. Or that, or I'm gonna die in the pit of a whale's stomach. That is... It's a genuine fear I have. Another reason I don't like the ocean. Whales. Graham Barlow said, "I'm sure you left out the original When a Stranger Calls to justify a part 2. I just felt I'd be cheating if I put both When a Stranger Calls and Scream on the same list, because Scream was mimicking When a Stranger Calls while paying homage. I could have put When a Stranger Calls. I'm just making excuses for myself. I'll put it in a part 2. Beezer said, "I love that you had Suspiria on this list. The opening is great, as is the whole movie. I also love that you commented on Goblin's score in the movie. Speaking of scores, a video on the top 5 best scores in horror films would be a great idea." Honestly, I see this comment in every single video. Top 5 best scores. Listen guys. Top 5 best scores in horror movies. We could do it, but you would want to hear the score. And we can't play the score because of copyright. It's just not worth it, is it? I mean, we could, maybe if you really want it. But yes, Suspiria is amazing and Goblin score is even better. But we can't play it for you. Steve Cass said Alfred Hitchcock was a genius when it comes to suspense. Yes, he was. So many people walked out of Psycho. But the thing that really bothered people the most was the toilet flushing scene. It was the first time a toilet was flushed on screen in Psycho. Really pissed a lot of people off. I'm the Canadian said, "Please don't ever leave this channel, Lucy, and if you do ever want to leave, please don't." Thanks. I don't actually plan on leaving at all, so I'm gonna be here till the end of time, till the end of YouTube. I ain't going anywhere. Don't worry. I'm not leaving. And on that note, if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another scary vid. And until next time, see you later.
Japan is home to some of the strangest fictional creatures on Earth. I'm not 100% sure why this is the case, but it's irrefutable. The folklore is full of freaky fiends and oddly specific spirits. Did you know that there's a critter that loves licking the filth in dirty bathrooms? Or a sentient lump of rotten human flesh that exists mostly just to stink? Yokai and all of the associated oddities have been featured in just about every type of media imaginable, from ancient wall scrolls to video games and webcomics. There's a monster for everyone to love, and different iterations of the most popular ones to ensure anyone can enjoy experiencing it. While a lot of them are sort of silly, others can be downright terrifying. And sometimes the goofiest ones are scream-inducing in their own special way. Hello horror heads, and welcome back to the scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. I'm your horror host, Keegan Hughes, and today we're counting down the top 5 scariest monsters from Japanese folklore. Before we get started, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more salacious spirits. Perfect. Let's get going. Swooping in at number 5, we've got the Kama Itachi. You like your limbs, right? You'd rather they didn't fly off in the blink of an eye? Well, then you'd be best to avoid these wind weasels as best you can. Also known as the Sickle Weasel, the Kama Itachi usually roams around on whirlwinds in groups of 3. Sometimes they're brothers, sometimes even triplets, but the trio aspect is pretty much immovable. These little fuzzy flayers like to run around and cut people's legs off. At the ankles or calves is the usual choice, but you never know. Their method of slicing and dicing is pretty ubiquitous. The first weasel will knock the victim down, the second will come through with a sickle and slice the leg off, then the third and final fellow will run through, sew up the wounds, and put some numbing medicine on the newly stumpified leg. This all happens so fast most folks don't even notice their legs are gone until they're staring up at the clouds. Blink and you'll miss it. At first, the numbing agent makes it so there's no pain, but that will wear off eventually, and then you'll get to deal with the pain of having your legs hacked off and sewn up by a tiny mammal. Coming in at number 4, we've got Hyosube. Okay, are you ready for my quick description of this? You sure? Alright, this is an eggplant stealing filth goblin. Doesn't that sound just wonderful? These short, hairy, dirty, humanoid things run around like they own the place and kill a whole bunch of folks as a result. If you see one, you die. And they don't do a very good job of staying out of sight. Hide and seek, this is not. They wander about just waiting for an unfortunate soul to behold them. As they live out their terrible little lives, they also eat all of the eggplants in your garden. Oh, you were gonna make some baba ganoush. Well, too bad. Hyosube say, F your dip-based meals and F you too. All of the aubergines get consumed and they trample the fields for good measure. The jerks. The only way to avoid accidentally seeing one is to leave out some prime eggplants for them, and even this is hit and miss. For some reason, eating your crops and ruining your fields isn't enough, and Hyosube also like to use your bathtub. And like I mentioned earlier, they're very dirty little creatures. They're known for leaving behind ridiculous amounts of filth, like hair, dirt, and scum. To me, finding somebody else's filth in my bathroom is about an 8 out of 10 on the heebie-jeebies scale. So this is absolutely life-altering information. And by the way, you can't throw out the bathwater or it'll just kill you anyway. Honestly, I think I'd rather die than having to live with a tub full of goblin stink for the rest of my tenure. Coming in at number 3, we've got Tsuchigumo. Monsters have been mashed for as long as we can remember, and it's not always a graveyard smash, mind you. Sometimes it's the combination of many real, living creatures to make something extra nightmarish. Manticores, chimeras, ligers. Maybe that last one is real, but I bounce between Napoleon Dynamite and Joe Exotic for opinions on the mystical status of a lion tiger crossbreed. Back to the Tsuchigumo though. This is a beast with the body of a tiger, the limbs of a spider, and the face of a demon. Part real mammal, part real, albeit much smaller arachnid, part mythical monster. Hell yeah, I want to fight this in a video game. But if I'm not behind an LCD screen with a super powerful video game avatar, I don't think I'd ever want to cross one of these. Apparently Tsuchigumo were known for eating travelers as they made their way across the countryside. In the remote fields, no one can hear you scream. 1 or 2 traveling morsels wasn't enough either. In one tale, a powerful warrior took one down and sliced it open. You know, to loot the body. We're back in the video game world, of course. And inside, there were 1,990 skulls. 10 shy of 2,000. That's a prolific people eater. Coming in at number 2, we've got Giorgumo. If you've ever seen the Spookies, you'll know that the best monster in the ridiculous mishmash is a spider woman. Now, the monster who drains the puppeteer dry and the Giorgumo aren't identical, but they do share the 2 major components of spider women. The spider part and the woman part. Deep analysis, I know. But getting trapped in a sticky web and having all your fluids drained, not fun. In fact, it sounds like a terrible time. For some, I feel like maybe some people might enjoy it. This is why arachnid gals are the worst. The Giorgumo is an ancient creature with depictions dating all the way back to the Edo period in Japan. Its upper half is that of a beautiful woman, while the lower half is hairy spider legs. We've all been there, right? It will lure men to a shack in the middle of nowhere, snare their prey in a web, and then eat them alive. Apparently, when a spider hits year 400, it gains magical transformative powers. I don't know what kinds of spiders usually live that long, but who am I to judge a creature with that much longevity? I probably won't make it till 50. In addition to some Giorgumo using their feminine charm to trap men, there are also versions that will manipulate good folks before devouring them. These spider women will show up with what seems to be a baby, begging for help. Soft-hearted people spring at the opportunity to help this poor mother and end up being torn apart by thousands of freshly hatched spider babies. You ever seen a spider nest ready to burst? Oh no, no, no. no. And finally, at number 1, we've got the Tekiteke, a more modern piece of Japanese folklore, but with enough scare factor and staying power to top today's list. This is the tale of a girl who fell on the train tracks and was cut in half by a passing train. Somehow she was left alive and continued to survive even when her torso was completely separated from her legs. The upper half of this poor gal stalks the night, attacking commuters and dooming them to the same fate. Sometimes she'll cut the train goers in half herself, using a sickle of some sorts. Other times she'll just force them onto the tracks so they can experience a train running them over too. One might wonder where the name Tekiteke comes from, and like a lot of Japanese folklore, it originates from onomatopoeia. See, this half-person's exposed spine scratches against the pavement and makes a very distinctive sound. And in Japan, that sound is characterized as teketeke. Yes, she's named after bones being dragged across concrete. That's hardcore. More than probably any of the other entries on this list, Tekiteke makes regular appearances in horror movies, manga, and anime. And it really feels like a modern tale too, much more gruesome and human. Plus, the member of disfigurement is based entirely in modern technology. As much fun as it would be to visit Japan, I'm also sort of worried that I would get chopped in half or tricked into being food for some god-awful beast. Although I suppose that's true for visiting anywhere that has some sort of folklore. Maybe I'll just stay in the basement forever. What'd you think of this list? Which of the 5 is your favorite? What's your favorite monster from Japanese folklore? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more rugged ones from the top 5 scary facts about the virus you need to know. Silverboy387 says, remember guys, tough times don't last, tough people last. Excellent platitude, Silverboy387. Remember, tough people can also be having a rough go. Ripsy says, there was a guy here in Michigan that went into a Walmart to lick fruits and vegetables to spread the virus. So wash your produce, folks, and your hands. And your collectible action figures. The Gothic Two-Step says, I knew all this. What I wasn't prepared for was the interesting artwork on your wall. I don't see why everyone takes issue with my beautiful portrait. There is nothing wrong with it at all. Paul Michaels 2010 says, I simply love Keegan's sweatshirt. Must own it at once. I'd tell you where to get one, but I found it on a rack at a vintage clothing fair. It's hard to locate duplicates, unfortunately. And Random Street Theater says, I'm watching this video at work. Don't worry, I won't tell your boss. And that's all the time we have for today. Before I walk under a ladder while crossing a black cat and stepping on a sidewalk crack, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more island-based tales. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
What's going on, guys, and welcome back to Top 5 Scary Videos. Europe is home to many tales of mythological creatures. Coming in at many different shapes and sizes, there are many to pick from. So, here to break down 5 of these monsters, I'm Taylor McWatters, and here are our top 5 horror monsters from European folklore. Let's get to it. Alright, kicking off the list at number 5, we have Banshee, the Irish Banshee. Scream like a banshee, there's a line you've probably heard in movies or songs, but what the hell is a banshee anyways? I've never been to a zoo and then seen a banshee before. It's not something I've done. It's actually a reference to the woman of the fairies. Irish folklore says that if you hear this woman scream, that means a family member is going to die. What a harsh and gruesome warning. The Irish Banshee is said to live in the forest, but she still is connected to you. Okay, so the scream, her scream, can be heard from very far away. So yeah, it's a warning, a terrifying warning that's pretty loud. You're not gonna miss it. It's said that each family has their own banshee, which is the interesting part. She has a different appearance for each family, so there's not one specific look for her. I mean, some accounts report her to be super tall and lanky, like moi, where other reports have been between, 1 to 4 feet. And the wardrobe, super fitting for the tale. She sometimes rocks the gray cloak over the green dress, and other times she goes out in all white with the red hair. She will warn you of a death by screaming. This is important. But most of the time, it's said that she only appears with the descendants of the pure Milesian stock of Ireland. So surnames that prefix with O and Mac. What about MC? Is that close enough? Like Mick, Mac, O? Am I cool? Am I good? Like in X-Men First Class, the movie, we see one of the main characters named Banshee, and their powers are screaming really loud. So even in our popular culture today, this legend has still managed to stay afloat. What about you guys? Does anybody out there have their own Banshee that they want to talk about or share stories? Is your last name dangerously close to it like mine, McWatters? Let us know down below. And before we continue with our list, guys, if you haven't already, please give us a spooky thumbs up because it helps us pay the bills for our electrical chairs in the basement here, So thanks. Anyways, back to European folklore. Coming in at number 4, we have the Basilisk. Originating from Europe and North Africa, the Basilisk is a hybrid between a rooster and a lizard. How fun. It was born from an egg laid by a rooster and incubated by a toad. It's kind of like Jurassic Park, but you know, more fun, more terrifying, I don't know, depends. But it didn't always take that shape exactly. So early accounts of the basilisk say that it started off as a small crowned snake and would simply kill by using its poison and evil gaze. Of course, you can't forget the gaze. And it even leaves a trail of venom, as if that wasn't enough. So you know where not to go, rather. In Christian mythology, the basilisk represents hell, yet some places it represents power. Like it became the symbol of the Swiss city Basel. It's believed to be the most poisonous creature ever, and apparently once it was killed by a spear from somebody on a horse, and the venom was so strong that it flowed up through the spear and killed the man and the horse. Not the horse? Come on, guys. Even the herbs around it died because the air was tainted of poison. And if there's a well near it, that water becomes poisoned forever. I mean, there's nothing a little crystal light can't fix though, right? Sip water, you're like, no, this one's tainted for sure. And then it became known as this large hybrid creature with a loud roar.
Do the roar.
You know anything? How about one of those famous Shrek roars?
Do the roar.
And of course, it's known to breathe fire. Another common interpretation is that the basilisk from Harry Potter. So in Chamber of Secrets, we see Harry fight the basilisk, and it takes on the appearance of a very, very large snake. Greek mythology always has the coolest stuff. Damn. It also appeared in the 2016 film Gods of Egypt.
And how do you know they have a weak spot?
I don't, but they must, right?
In a much less exciting cinematic way than Harry Potter, I'd say. And coming in at number 3, we have the Genganger. Making its origins in Norway and Denmark, there have been many different depictions of the Genganger, of course. Always so many depictions. The most popular being that of a spirit or ghost of the recently deceased. Now, that just sounds like any ghost in general, right? But what makes the Genganger stand out is that its name translates to against or towards, and also a footwalker. So the name itself also implies to walking after death. People who committed suicide were usually the ones who came back as a Genganger. Or perhaps before they passed away, there was something else that they had to do in order to be at peace, so they went back to do that. Whatever the case may be, the Genganger usually needs assistance from somebody in the living world. Now that's where things get a bit spookier. See, in Scandinavian tradition, the Genganger isn't a malicious or evil entity, just a spirit that comes back to say, what's up, you know, how you guys doing? How's dinner? Are you still cooking? Nah, awesome, when it disappears. Whereas other traditions, it's like a violent thing. You know, you didn't want a loved one coming back in this form. It was malicious. Relatives actually went the extra mile to make sure that your grave was properly sealed to avoid this, or else you would get the dead man's pinch. Now the dead man's pinch, no, it's not a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and it sounds pretty scary, but you don't want to be on the receiving end of the dead man's pinch. It happens when you're asleep, because when you wake up, your skin would be blue and sunken, you know? Usually being attacked in your sleep means that you shouldn't be resting near a certain area. So maybe you're too close to a graveyard or too close to like these mountains. I mean, just throw a sign up, that works too. You don't have to pinch or bite any of us. So this undead zombie vampire combo would also break into your homes to spread disease. How fun. 6 feet apart, guys, come on, read the thing. Wear masks, space out. The tradition of the Genganger traces back to the early Viking ages as well, believe it or not. They're present in many of the Icelandic sagas, such as the saga of Eric the Red, taking the form of a mortal creature, and then Grendir is also said to have slayed the Genganger with his sword. Cool, it's always fun when you slay one of those. And number 2, the Liko. Heading over to explore some Slavic folklore where the Liko is otherwise known as the embodiment of all evil and misfortune. Now, if that doesn't sound horrible enough, their appearance is sure to get you. She's described as being an old lady dressed in all black, but she has one eye that peers out. And it's haunting looking, very. It's also known as a male that resembles a goblin, so either way, they're both not that fun. My personal favorite tale of the Liko is that some said it's taller than trees, like it's a cyclops almost, which is great. So what's the point of the Liko? Why the late night strolls bestowing bad fortune? Well, the Liko, and I'll keep saying Liko because I can't read, the Liko is known to be the servant of death. So during pre-Christian times, villages would conduct these rituals during times of epidemic. And a female-like idol would be built to be used as kindle to ignite a sacrificial fire. They thought, hey, if we destroy a version of it in the fire, then the epidemic would be dispelled. Then, of course, later on, it was linked to bad luck and death. The Liko is said to stalk its victims by perching on a fence or in a tree, just watching you from afar. And in many fairy tales, it's said that the Liko would jump onto your back and have its hands on you so tightly that even if you flailed around, it wouldn't let go. And while it was biting your neck, people would try and run into a body of water, hoping that it would drown, or at least let go. I mean, come on. And that wasn't the case. This was often the cause of their untimely death. See, the Liko doesn't cause their victim to drown, but death is usually the result of the victim trying to get rid of it. So it makes it look like it's your fault in a way. There is a tale of a blacksmith who encountered the Liko and made a pretty wild deal. So as the Liko was preparing to eat the blacksmith, he offers to craft anything the creature wants. So, of course, she asks for another eye, a new eye. The blacksmith insisted that the Liko be strapped down during this, because if she moved while the eye was being hammered in, it just wouldn't work out, right? It would make it worse, if anything. So once she was strapped down, the blacksmith took a red hot poker and jabbed her other eye out. That's crazy. That's like some Bruce Willis stuff right there. The blacksmith escaped by pretending to be a sheep, so the Liko didn't notice him when all the sheep had left the shed. Gotta love those handy sheepskin coats laying around. And coming in at number 1, Fear Liath, the big gray man, and no, I don't mean Gandalf. Also known as Fear Liath more, this one comes from Scottish mythology, and it's probably one that you've heard of in one way or another. It's known as a possible guardian of another dimension. Coming in at superhuman size, its dreadful presence can cause suicidal thoughts. The big gray man of Ben Macdui is said to be a distant cousin or somehow related to Bigfoot. That's why they look so big and hairy and similar. As they share similar appearances, of course, the mountain Ben Macdu is home to this fantastic beast that you don't want to find. Many glimpses of the Fear Liath have been stated that it's blurry, kind of like how all the photo evidence we have of Bigfoot is blurry itself. Many believe the cameras simply just weren't good enough to capture a clear image, but the blurry feature is said to be part of its ghostly nature. See, it's this tall, sinister, blurry gray creature. Science argues the existence of the Fear Liath, saying that the appearances of the creature are simply an illusion caused by atmospheric conditions atop high mountains, where the shadows of somebody can be cast far away and look like this large giant phantom. So this ape creature has also been beloved to the missing link in our evolution. People think this is like the half man, half ape right in the middle thing. What do you guys think? The shadow of death itself, or just the shadow of Fred the mountain hiker? Which one? One of the common feelings you get when being in the presence of Fear Liath is dread and panic. Now, many believe that this happens when you're climbing a mountain and there's not enough oxygen getting to your brain. That plus the anxieties of being on a mountain thousands of feet in the air, your brain will play tricks on you. But some tales are too convincing. One of the earliest sightings took place back in 1890 by John Norman Colley, a respected scientist and explorer who was walking in Cairngorms, and a heavy mist appeared as he arrived atop of Ben Macdui Mountain. This fog reduced his visibility, and he didn't talk about his experience for 35 years. That's a long time to keep a secret. That's wild. He heard footsteps behind him crunching that didn't match his own walking pace. And then he described this creature that he saw. It was large with broad shoulders, over 10 feet tall, with long waving arms. He also said it had an olive-like complexion, or rather covered in short brown hair. But in majority of these cases, the creature is only heard or sensed. So if you're thinking of grabbing a Polaroid and hitting the slopes, you won't be too lucky. Well guys, there you have it. Which of these European folklore monsters live rent-free in your head now? Let us know in the comments down below. Also, let us know which monsters we missed so we can throw them in for a sneaky part 2. I don't know. I've been your host, Taylor McWatters. Thank you for tuning in. Stay safe. See ya. Alrighty. Wake these eyes up. Yeah, here we go. The Irish Banshee. Ooh, air. So, you know, oh my god. In Christian mythology, the Basilisk in Christian mythology, oh my god, so many big words in this one, so early. Number 3, oh, and it's cut off. Got lucky, I got halfway through it. I'm like, oop, there it is. The basilisk has been near this water, I can tell. It's tainted. And it may not sound that scary. Actually, it does sound pretty scary. Dead man's pinch. Now, doesn't that just sound pleasant? Oh, it does. There we go. I was like, did I only write like a small? I gotta talk slow for this one. Number 2, the Liko. That's it. Now back to number 1. Air.
Blimey! There are some truly scary stories that originate from across the pond, innit? I sincerely apologize to anyone watching other than Lucy for that awful opening British line. But it's true. Plenty of terrifying creatures stem from the local legends of the less than tropical island, so why not take a look at the few of the best known and most blood-chilling. We're gonna count down the top 5 horror monsters from British folklore. Let's hop to it. Coming in number 5, we've got the Rat Men of Southend. Who could forget Dear Rat Boy, am I right? Well, if you forgot him before, prepare to have some imagery burned into your brain for life. There are actually a couple of tales referring to a rat man from Southend, so why not talk about both? The first is a little more fun and a little less tragic. Tragic nonetheless, but more juicy details and less cold-blooded murder. So according to some, at one point, the mayor of Southend was indeed a rat bastard. Not literally, but in the way that he constantly and unrepentantly cheated on his wife. Poor woman, although she did choose to marry a politician. So as divine punishment for this mayor's consistent adultery, his son was born with a rat face and a long tail. This did not sit well with the social climbing couple, but what could they do? For a while they would feed their son the only thing he craved: meat. This rat boy would chow down on raw flesh like nobody else. Eventually they realized they couldn't possibly raise a meat-eating rat lad in full view of the public, so the mayor had an underpass with secret chambers built just for his rat son. And for the rest of his days, Rat Boy lived in the dank, dark underpass, attempting escape and scaring anyone who dared pass through. He eventually grew into a rat man in his own right, and even killed a few folks for food. The legend persists, with some night tours insisting that they stroll the underpass in case he decides to come out at night. Yeesh. The second story has more to do with the man and also rats, but I'll tell it anyway. Apparently there was an old man also living below an underpass. He had no belongings save for his clothes and a blanket, and he did his best to stay hidden away. However, one day a group of rowdy teenagers came across this man and mercilessly beat him. Once he was incapacitated, they stole his blanket and left him to die in the cold. Unable to move due to his injuries, the man eventually did succumb to hypothermia. Following his death, hundreds of rats emerged from the shadows to consume his lifeless body. Thus began the legend of the Rat Man, consumed by the scurrying dark masses that plague the city. Some say that you can still hear strange scrabbly noises near that underpass. Could it be the descendants of those rats looking for more human flesh? Or maybe it's the ghost of the Rat Man himself, crawling around, disemboweled and confused. Coming in number 4, we've got fairy dogs. Doesn't that just sound lovely? Like a little dachshund puppy with little Tinkerbell wings? Well, that is not what these fairies are like. Of course, the fairies that folks see in Disney movies are much friendlier than the ones from folklore. Fairies of legend are often mischievous, looking to cause trouble in best case scenarios and trying to ruin people in harsher cases. So it stands to reason that fairy dogs might not be so sociable. No belly rubs or ear scratches will make these fearsome canines friendly. See, there's an idea out there that crossroads are the door to another world. If you make the wrong choice or linger too long, you might find yourself staring down a fairy, a demon, or a god. Not necessarily what the average person wants, you know? These otherworldly beings usually live their lives unseen and unsensed by us, but at crossroads their actions might become more apparent. Some crossroads might even feature a fairy dog or two. These four-legged fiends guard the entrance. They're known for glowing bright green, making sure you don't mistake them for a regular dog. And if you see one, it's best to turn around. They'll bark twice as a warning. Alright, 2, remember that. And don't worry if you think you might miss one of these barks, they're as loud and commanding as they come. But if you do not heed this warning and the dog gets out a third bark, you are doomed. Sure, good things come in threes, just not this time. Hey guys, if you're liking the video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up, it really helps us with the algorithm. On with the list. Coming in number 3, we've got the knocker. You would think that mining is scary enough as is, right? Heading into underground tunnels to blast away at rocks until you find some useful materials, hopefully not getting caved in, probably not running out of oxygen, etc. Well, this dangerous career comes with its own share of folklore too, just to make sure that some unexplainable spooks become even spookier. The knocker is a mining monster. Based on the sounds of underground work, it is a spirit that lives within the same tunnels that the helmet-wearing workers descend into every day. Apparently the knocker is the ghost of a tin miner. It's 2 feet tall with a big head, long beard, and arms that almost drag along the ground. Being the ghost of a miner, it carries all the necessary equipment from lamps to pickaxes. Folks familiar with mining might know about the knocking sounds that echo throughout. This is a very scary sound as it can often be indicative of a cave-in. The actual knocking came from the creaking of earth and timbers before giving way, but to some of the miners the noise came from these malevolent spirits attempting to knock down the walls. There are actually all sorts of knocker related tales, ranging from benevolent to malevolent, but sometimes remaining largely benign. But the scariest additions are those who went around the different tunnels stealing equipment and food, leaving the miners in terrible situations. Sometimes they would even purposefully misdirect miners, leaving them lost in the labyrinth of mine shafts and passages. Worst of all, they're associated with mine fires, which are absolutely horrifying. So make sure you toss the last bite of your meat pie into the mine for the knockers, lest you find yourself in a whole world of trouble. Coming in at number 2, we've got Bog Arts. Nasty, nasty creatures these ones are. A lot of folks are familiar with them thanks to the Harry Potter universe, but the idea of rotten little buggers ruining everything has been around for a lot longer than that. Household spirits looking to cause as much trouble as possible, Bog Arts are something nobody ever wants to deal with. They're famous for making possessions disappear, causing milk to sour, and having dogs walk lame. Definitely not fun. And once you've found yourself in the upsetting company of one, good luck getting rid of it. They will stick with your family no matter where you go, no matter how far you run. Your things will keep disappearing, your food will keep going bad, and you'll always be haunted by the knowledge that an awful little is making all of it happening. But don't even think about reasoning with a boggart. Sure, they were once helpful brownies or silkies, but something offended them or caused them to feel mistreated, and now they are just pure bad. Even if you offer to make a deal or treat it nicely from now on, it will respond very negatively. It will get furious and wreck all of your stuff in one go instead of doing it mischievously over the course of many years. So yeah, it's like a poltergeist you can't escape, but somehow worse. Folks that have to deal with these, not happy folks. And finally at number 1, we've got Black Shuck. We've talked about fairy dogs earlier, but that was just the beginning. This is the true terror dog, the big, brutal bad boy, the canine carnivore fueled by carnage, a hate-eyed and vengeful black dog full of rage and malice. There are all sorts of variants based on where you are, from the Gargess to the Guy Trash to the Padfoot, but the best known is Black Shuck. See it and you are out of luck. This thing is the embodiment of Satan. Wherever it goes, destruction follows. A harbinger of doom with blazing red eyes. If you see one, you are supposed to hide or make sure not to look at it. If you neglect to avert your gaze, your luck will get so bad that you die within the year. Holy smokes, right? There's one tale from a Suffolk church that tells of a Black Shuck visit during 1577. The enormous dog came running in, killed a man and a boy, and caused the steeple to collapse through the roof. It then left in a hurry, leaving dark scorch marks on the door. And that was just one little tale. Even if you're a dog person, you do not want to run into one of these. Something tells me that a treat won't smooth things over. Makes you want to hunker down to the pub and never leave now, doesn't it? That's usually the way to do things anyways, but now you have the quality monster aversion excuse to keep on doing it. Well, what'd you think of the list? Were you aware of these folktale freaks? What's your favorite horrifying folk monster? Did I miss any good British ones? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more adhesive ones from the top 5 SCP Foundation hidden secrets. Seth Tangala says SCP hidden secrets? Not anymore. Whoops, well, I guess I'll be taking a long vacation at Lake Laogai, so call me if you need me there. Martin Christensen says, I seem to remember something about the Foundation in emergencies using refugee camps if they run low on D-Class. Somehow that doesn't surprise me. It should, but the Foundation has resorted to many extreme measures over the years. Richard Torres says, I'm going to make that strain. Be careful. Remember, with great power comes great responsibility. Doge King Animates says, alien dudes on the moon. Hell yeah, alien dudes on the moon. And Matt Woodward says there are actually several O5 councils due to alterations in the timeline. They all exist in some way. Even the O5s themselves don't know who the real O5 council is anymore. True, there are so many different canons within the wiki it's impossible to tell what's real. And that's all the time we have for today. I'm going to tweet something controversial and see what happens. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. And that's all the time we have for today. I'm going to tweet something... Did you guys pick it up? Windy! Well, if you forgot, poor woman, she just... The legend persists with some night tours insisting that they stroll the... It's kind of noisy, eh? Lots of rumbling. A lot of junk getting moved. But if you do not heed this warning, the dog get... Coming in at number 3, we've got the Knocker. Ooh. Apparently the Knocker is the ghost of a tin miner, but it's 2 feet tall with a big... But But the scariest editions are those who went around different, what the heck? Are those who went around the different tunnels, yep. Coming at number 2, we've got Bog Arts. Are they Bogarts or Bog Arts? I think they're Bog Arts, because Humphrey Bogart is a different thing. Bog Arts. Coming in at number 2, we've got Bog Arts. Nope, Bog Arts. Bog Arts? Oh my god, I can't decide. Bog Arts? Bog Arts? But the idea of rotten little buggers running around moving, and whoop. I'm just gonna wait for this motorcycle. Still going. Just doing circles. The worst, whoops. Well, I guess I'll be taking a long
We have covered a slew of folklore tales from across the globe. However, let's head east today over to India, where there are a ton for us to cover to keep you up tonight, or just to serve your brain with a little bit of Indian folklore knowledge. So today on Top 5 Scary Videos, I'm going to be counting down our list of the top 5 terrifying monsters from Indian folklore. Before we begin though, be sure to stick around until the end of the video where I'll be responding to some of your comments. With that, let's jump in. Also, apologies if my pronunciations are off. Coming in at 5, Garuda. Garuda is a legendary bird or bird-like creature in Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain mythology. He is variously the vehicle mount of the Hindu god Vishnu, a Dharma protector and Astasena in Buddhism, and the Yaksha of the Jain Tirthankara Shantinatha. It is described as a kind of bird and a kite-like figure. He is shown either in zoomorphic form or in anthropomorphic form. Garuda is generally a protector with power to swiftly go anywhere, ever watchful, and an enemy of the serpent. In Hinduism, Garuda is a divine eagle-like sunbird and the kind of birds. He is said to be a powerful creature in the epics whose wing flapping can stop the spinning of heaven, earth, and hell. He is also described to be the vehicle mount of the Hindu god Vishnu, as I previously mentioned, and typically they are shown together. Garuda's links to Vishnu, the Hindu god who fights injustice and destroys evil in his various avatars to preserve Dharma, had made him an iconic symbol of king's duty and power, an insignia of royalty or Dharma. His eagle-like form is shown either alone or with Vishnu, signifying divine approval of the power of the state. He is found on the faces of many early Hindu kingdom coins, with this symbolism either as a single-headed bird or a three-headed bird that watches all sides. Throughout the Mahabharata, Garuda is invoked as a symbol of impetuous violent force or speed and of martial prowess. Coming in at 4, Makara. Makara is a legendary sea creature in Hindu mythology. In Hindu astrology, Makara is equivalent to the zodiac sign Capricorn, which is my sign. Makara appears as the Vahana of the river goddess Ganga, Narmada, and of the sea god Varuna. Makara are considered guardians of gateways and thresholds, protecting throne rooms as well as entryways to temples. It is the most commonly recurring creature in Hindu and Buddhist temple iconography, and also frequently appears as a gargoyle or as a spout attached to a natural spring. It is generally depicted as half terrestrial animal in the frontal part and half aquatic animal in the hind part. Though Makara may take many different forms throughout Hindu culture, in the modern world its form is always related to the marsh crocodile or water monitor. Makara has been depicted typically as half mammal and half fish. In many temples, the depiction is in the form of the half fish or seal with head of an elephant. It is also shown in an anthropomorphic with head and jaws of a crocodile, an elephant trunk with scales of fish, and a peacock tail. Lakshmi sitting on a lotus is also a depiction in which she pulls the tongue of the elephant-shaped Makara is meant to project Lakshmi's image as the goddess of prosperity, wealth, and well-being. It represents a necessary state of chaos before the emergence of a new state of order. Coming in at 3, Gandabaranda. The Gandabaranda or Baranda is a two-headed bird in Hindu mythology, believed to possess immense magical strength. It was the emblem of the erstwhile kingdom of Mysore under the Wadiyar kings, and after India attained independence, it was retained the Mysore state as its emblem. The bird is generally depicted as clutching elephants in its talons and beaks, demonstrating its immense strength. In the Chennakeshava temple of Belur, Karnataka, Gandabaranda, the two-faced bird, is carved as a scene of chain of destruction in which a deer becomes prey to a big python, which in turn is lifted by an elephant. A lion attacks the elephant and the lion itself is devoured by Gandabaranda. The Gandabaranda was later identified as a physical form displayed by Narasimha, man-lion incarnation of Lord Vishnu. After Lord Narasimha had slain the demon Hiranyakashipu, he clung on to his dreadful form. The Devas were even more afraid of Lord Vishnu than they were of the demon. In order to protect the entire creation, Lord Shiva incarnated as Sharaba, a part lion and part bird beast. This further angered Lord Narasimha, who took the form of Lord Gandabaranda, who fought Sharaba for 18 days and held him between his two beaks and ripped him apart, thus killing him. Coming in at number 2, Ahayo Vritra. Vritra is a Vedic serpent or dragon in Hinduism, the personification of drought and adversary of Indra. Also identified as Asura, Vritra was also known in the Vedas as Ahai. He appears as a dragon blocking the course of the rivers and is heroically slain by Indra. According to the Rig Veda, Vritra kept the waters of the world captive until he was killed by Indra, who destroyed all the 99 fortresses of Vritra before liberating the imprisoned rivers. The combat began soon after Indra was born, and he had drunk a large volume of soma at Vashti's house to empower him before facing Vritra. Vashtis fashioned the thunderbolts for Indra and Vishnu when asked to do so by Indra, made space for the battle by taking the 3 great strides for which Vishnu became famous. Vritra broke Indra's 2 jaws during the battle, but was then thrown by Indra, and in falling crushed fortresses that had already been shattered. Indra became known as Vrtranan, meaning slayer of Vritra. However, the story changes in Puranic and later versions. As told in the narration given to King Yudhishthira in the Mahabharata, Vritra was a demon created by artisan god Vashta to avenge the killing of his son by Indra. Vritra won the battle and swallowed Indra, but the other gods forced him to vomit Indra out. The battle continued and Indra was eventually forced to flee. Vishnu and the sages then brokered a truce, with Indra swearing that he would not attack Vritra with anything made of metal, wood or stone, nor anything that was dry or wet, or during the day or the night. Indra instead used the foam from the waves of the ocean to kill him at twilight. Sneaky sneaky. And finally coming in at number 1, Sharabar. Sharabar or Sarabar is a part lion and part bird beast in Hindu mythology who, according to Sanskrit literature, is 8-legged and more powerful than a lion or an elephant, possessing the ability to clear a valley in just one jump. In Sanskrit literature, Sharaba is initially described as an animal that roared and scared other animals in the hills and forest areas. In the great epic Mahabharata, this form of Sharaba was defined as a lion-slaying monster with 8 legs, eyes on the top, living in the forest and which ate raw flesh. It is also mentioned as residing on Mount Karuncha, but not as a monster, but as an ordinary beast along with lions and tigers. Sharaba appears primarily as the incarnation of Lord Shiva, as a name of a monkey king in the epic Ramayana, also as a proper name of heroes and serpent Najas, and one of the names of god Vishnu as well as Buddha. In Puranic literature, Sharaba is associated with the god Shiva, who incarnates to subdue fierce manifestations of Vishnu. The man-lion form of Vishnu brings about the rivalry between the devotees of Vishnu and those of Shiva. Sharaba is portrayed with 2 heads, 2 wings, 8 legs of the lion with sharp claws and a long tail. Sharaba is also described as black in color with 4 feet downward and 4 feet uplifted, with an enormous body. It also had a long face and nose, nails, 8 legs, 8 tusks, a cluster of mane, and a long tail. It jumped high repeatedly, making a loud cry. Well, there we have it. Do you guys agree with our list with only monsters that we missed? Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below. I apologize once again for my pronunciations. It is a difficult task. Before I go though, I just want to respond to a few comments on one of our last videos, Top 5 Scary Irish Urban Legends. Eternal Communism 1974 said, Lucy McPhee, your current outfit is what I will always remember in this life and after. By the way, it also reminds me of my ex-girlfriend in 2018. I've heard a lot about this ex-girlfriend in 2018. She's still dead. 60 Girl PDX said, not all fingers are good fingers. Lucy 2020. That was an iconic quote by me, I must say. I want that on my gravestone. Andy Romero said, I like trains, do you? I like trains too. It's probably my favourite form of transport. I'm hopping on the train. Beezel1225 said, thank you for covering Ireland. I find their urban legends fascinating. As do I. It was very fascinating. And on that note, if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another scary vid. And until next time, see you later. After Lord Narasimha had slain the demon I swear to God, editors, put this all at the end, please. Make this 10 minutes. Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu. Everyone's gonna hate me. Hiranyakashipu. Who took the form of Lord who fought Sharaba. I'm so sorry. Coming in at 2, Ahai. Or Vrit. Ahai. Vritra. Ahai or Vritra. Vritra is a Vedic. Oh, I hate that. I've been like delaying filming this for so long. For this feat, Indra became known as Frahanan. As told in the narration given to King Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira, Yudhishthira, Yudhishthira. Sharaba, 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 Sharaba. As a name of a monkey king in the epic Ramayana. In the epic Ramayana, heroes and serpent nagas and one. God, that sounds weird. Nah,
Yeah, it sounds like something else.
yeah, it sounds like I'm saying something. Sounds like. Sounds like the N word. Najas. Should I say Natjas?